Chapter 1. Rumors in the Diner. The bell above the door at Finch's Diner had a broken spring, so it didn't jingle like a normal doorbell. It made a sound more like someone accidentally swallowing a spoon. Darla had stopped noticing years ago, but tonight it kept breaking the rhythm of the rain on the roof, reminding her that people were still crazy enough to come out in this weather. She wiped down the counter for the third time, even though it already had the dull shine of a bowling ball. It was a slow night. Slow in the way where the few customers left were the ones with nowhere better to be. Henry Bell sat in his usual spot at the end of the counter, a permanent fixture in overalls and mud-caked boots. He was nursing coffee the way most people nursed wounds, one slow sip at a time. His gray hair stuck out from under a cap that might have once been red but had since faded into a barn dust color. "They ain't coyotes," he said suddenly, loud enough that half the diner turned their heads. Darla sighed. "Even into you too, Henry. I'm telling you," he said, leaning in as if sharing a state secret. "Coyotes don't howl like that." From the corner booth, Tim Larrabee, the local mechanic and self-appointed expert on everything, called out, "Maybe it's the ghost of a scarecrow, Henry. Come to reclaim his field." That got a chuckle from the others. Henry didn't laugh. "I've been hearing it for a week now. Starts just after sunset. Long, drawn-out howl, like something hurt but mad about it. First night I heard it, thought maybe it was a dog. But my dogs, they don't go near the corn no more. They just sit on the porch and stare at it." Winnin'. Darla refilled his coffee. "And you're sure it's not just you drinking too much at night?" Henry shot her a look. "Only thing I've been drinking is this here sludge you call coffee." Before she could respond, the door made its metallic gulp sound again, and in walked Evan Clay, the youngest deputy in Brindle County. He looked like he'd just lost a fight with the rain and possibly the road. "Evenin'," he said, brushing off his uniform jacket. "You hear about the Wilkinses' cat?" Darla set the pot down. "What about it?" "Gone," Evan said. "Vanished. No tracks, no blood, just gone. Mrs. Wilkins swears she heard something howlin' the night before." Henry raised a finger like he'd just been vindicated by God himself. "Told you. Could be a fox," Evan said. "Could be an owl, could be something that likes to hunt in the corn," Henry interrupted. "You remember the old stories, Clay? My granddad swore there was something out there when he was a boy. Tall thing, lean, Howl could freeze you where you stood." Evan snorted but didn't exactly deny it. Darla rolled her eyes, though the back of her neck prickled. She'd grown up in Brindle County too. Everybody had heard some version of the Cornfield howler story. It was one of those things you laughed at but didn't really want to test. The rain kept on falling, steady and unbothered, as if it didn't care that a small, tired town had just begun talking about monsters again. Chapter 2. First Encounter. Evan Clay had never liked cornfields at night. They were too quiet in the wrong places and too noisy in the others. Every rustle was either the wind or something making its way toward you. Still, here he was, boots sinking into the mud just past the Bell property line, his flashlight beam cutting narrow paths through the stalks. "Radio check," he muttered into his mic. Static answered him for a moment before the dispatcher's voice came through. Loud and clear, "Deputy. Don't get lost in there." Evan gave a dry laugh, the kind that didn't make it past his lips. "Copy that." Henry had been waiting for him when he pulled up, standing by his truck with a shotgun balanced on one arm. He'd pointed toward the rows of corn like they were the gates of hell. "Something took the scarecrow last night," Henry had said. Evan had tried not to smirk at the idea of a monster stealing a scarecrow, but Henry's expression made the humor dry up quick. Now, walking between the tall rows, Evan could smell the wet earth, the faint rot of fallen husks, and something else. Metallic, like old pennies in the back of your throat. He reached the clearing where the scarecrow used to stand. What remained of it was scattered across the ground. One glove here, a shredded burlap sack there. The wooden pole that held it up was snapped clean in two, as if something had twisted it. "Probably wind," Evan said under his breath. The sound of his own voice was oddly comforting. That's when he heard it. A long, low sound, not quite a howl, not quite a whistle, rising and falling in pitch. It came from deep in the corn, somewhere beyond where his flashlight could reach. Evan froze. The hair on his arms prickled under his jacket. The sound rose again, this time carrying a note that almost sounded like words. Not any words he recognized, but close. He forced himself to move toward it, counting his steps. 1, 2, 3. The beam of his flashlight swept across a pair of eyes. They were too far apart for a coyote, too high off the ground for a dog, and they reflected light in a pale, sickly green. They didn't blink. Evan swallowed. Hello? Why had he just said hello? The thing moved, just one step, but it was enough to send a shiver all the way down to his boots. The cornstalks barely moved as it slipped away, silent except for the faintest crunch of mud. The howl came again, much closer now, and this time, Evan swore he heard the word help buried in it. He turned and walked back toward the clearing, then walked faster, then ran. When he finally broke through to the edge of the field, Henry was waiting with his shotgun, eyes wide. "See it?" Henry asked. Evan opened his mouth, then closed it again. "I saw something." Henry didn't look surprised. He just nodded, slow, like he'd been expecting the answer all along. "Yeah," Henry said, "that's how it starts." Chapter 3. Escalation. By the next morning, the town of Brindle had something new to gossip about, and it wasn't Mrs. Wilkins's overcooked pumpkin pies. First, the Caldwells found one of their dairy cows dead in the pasture. Its body untouched except for a deep, ragged tear along its neck. No signs of a struggle. No tracks in the mud except the cow's own. Then Old Man Rigsby reported that his chicken coop door had been ripped off its hinges. The strange part? None of the chickens were eaten. Just gone, vanished like they'd been scooped up and carried away. By midday, Darla's diner was full of farmers arguing about what it could be. "I'm telling you, it's a big cat," said Tim Larrabee, pointing his coffee spoon like it was a lecture stick. "Mountain lion, maybe. Coulda wandered down from Minnesota." Henry Bell, who'd been sitting 2 stools away, gave him a look like he'd just declared himself king of Mars. "Mountain lions don't take chickens without leaving a mess. And they don't howl like that thing." "It's a coyote," said Carol Pike from the corner booth. "I read online they're getting bigger. Crossbreeding with wolves." "That's not a thing, Carol," Tim shot back. "Oh yeah?" she said. "Maybe you should read something besides your own ego once in a while." The argument climbed in volume until Darla banged her coffee pot on the counter. "All right, if we're gonna solve this by shouting, I'll lock the door and you can all scream yourselves hoarse without bothering my paying customers." The diner quieted, except for Henry muttering about how nobody ever listens until it's too late. That night, Darla was alone after closing, counting the days till. The rain had stopped, and the air outside was unnervingly still. She heard it before she saw it. A low scrape against the back door, like claws dragging along the metal. Her heart thumped once, hard. She reached for the baseball bat she kept under the counter. Another scrape, then a single, slow knock. Darla took one step toward the door and froze. From the other side came a sound that might have been breathing. Or just the wind pressing against the metal. But it wasn't windy. The bat felt slick in her hands. She took a deep breath, stomped to the door, and yanked it open. Nothing, just the empty alley, lit by a flickering street lamp. Except, at the far end of the alley, where the light didn't quite reach, she thought she saw something tall slip around the corner. Something that moved wrong, like it was bending at too many joints. A sound drifted back to her. That same drawn-out howl. And she swore she heard the word help in it. By Friday, the Brindle Town Hall was packed for an emergency meeting. Mayor Freeland, who had the nervous energy of a squirrel on espresso, stood at the front. "Folks, I understand there's concern about unusual animal activity," he began. "We're here to discuss solutions." The solutions quickly turned into more arguments. A hunting party stated, "If it bleeds, we can kill it." Setting traps was brought up. "We could catch it alive for the state to study." Blocking off the cornfields was suggested. "We block the cornfields, we block the harvest." Genius. By the time someone suggested it might be a corn werewolf, the meeting had descended into such a tangle of insults and conspiracy theories that Darla half expected a fistfight to break out. Evan, seated 2 rows behind her, caught her eye and mouthed, "We need to look ourselves." She wasn't sure if he was brave, stupid, or both. But she nodded. Chapter 4. The Hunt. The moon was a swollen, yellow coin hanging low over Brindle County the night they went into the corn. Evan had come by the diner just after closing with a duffel bag that clinked suspiciously. Inside were 2 flashlights, a box of ammo, and a thermos of coffee. Henry Bell was already in the passenger seat of his pickup when Darla climbed in, clutching her bat like it was a talisman. "You sure about this?" Evan asked as he drove down the rutted farm road. "No," Darla said, "but if we don't find out what's in that field, the whole town's gonna keep guessing until somebody ends up dead." Henry, staring out the window, muttered, "Might already be too late for that." The Bell cornfield loomed ahead, its edges shifting in the light wind like a living wall. Somewhere in there, the thing was waiting. They parked by the old silo, the truck's headlights slicing a path into the rows. "Stay close," Evan said. "If you hear me yell, don't argue. Just run." They moved into the corn, flashlights sweeping across stalks that seemed taller than they'd been in the daylight. The path narrowed until Darla could hear her own heartbeat echoing in her ears. Something rustled behind them. Evan spun, flashlight up. But nothing was there, just stalks swaying. Henry kept walking, leading them deeper. "It's close," he whispered. "I can smell it." Darla sniffed. She caught it too. A rank, wet fur stench undercut with that same coppery tang Evan had noticed days earlier. A faint, clicking sound started up ahead. Slow, irregular. They stepped into a small clearing where a rusted tractor sat, its engine idling even though no one was inside. The headlights cut through the fog rolling low to the ground. "That's not creepy at all," Darla muttered. Henry was already moving toward the machine, shotgun raised. "It was here," he said. Something dark and fast slammed into him, sending the old man flying into the corn. Evan fired once, the muzzle flash lighting up the clearing for a split second, and in that split second, Darla saw it. Tall, too tall, its limbs spindly but corded with muscle, bending wrong at the knees. Fur matted with mud and something darker. The head, the head, narrow, almost deer-like, but with a jaw that opened far too wide. It moved on all fours and upright in the same breath, flowing between shapes like water. The howl came again, so close it rattled Darla's teeth, and yes, she heard it now. Help, but it didn't sound like a plea. It sounded like a trap. Henry's voice yelled somewhere to their right, followed by a single shotgun blast. "Go," Evan shouted. They ran toward the sound, corn whipping against their faces. Darla's flashlight beam jittered across leaves and shadows until it found Henry, crouched, bleeding from his forehead. "It's playing with us," Henry panted. "Just like it did back then." "Back then?" Evan barked. Before Henry could answer, the thing's silhouette slid between the rows behind him. Taller now, unfolding itself to its full height. It took one step forward, and the corn seemed to part for it. Evan raised his gun, but it was gone before he could fire. Chapter 5, Showdown. The plan came together in less than an hour, mostly because no one had a better idea and time wasn't exactly on their side. Henry swore the thing liked toying with its prey, stalking them, circling, driving them into the open. If they could get it into the bell barn, maybe the old farming equipment could finish what bullets couldn't. The bait? A mix of raw venison from Henry's freezer and Darla's idea to add a little mood music. She dug out her late father's ancient record player from the diner's storage and set it on a hay bale, needle ready. The record? Hank Williams, crackly enough to sound like it was coming from another dimension. "Why the music?" Evan asked. "Because it's creepy as hell," Darla said, flicking the player on. The barn filled with the tinny wail of "I'm so lonesome I could cry." Outside, the cornfield shifted in the windless night. They waited, minutes stretched. The record hissed and popped between verses. Henry's shotgun rested across his knees, his eyes on the open barn doors. Evan stood near the side entrance, gun raised, trying to look braver than he felt. Darla gripped her bat, telling herself that this was just another Thursday night. The first sound was the clicking. Slow, deliberate, like claws on concrete. Then came the smell, wet fur, rot, and copper. A shadow filled the doorway. It stepped inside, tall enough that the barn's rafters almost brushed its head. In the dim light from the hanging bulb, Darla saw the gleam of its eyes. Pale green, unblinking. The jaw opened wider than should have been possible, revealing rows of teeth that didn't quite match in size or shape, like they'd been stolen from different animals. It moved toward the bait with a slow, unnatural grace. "Now," Henry hissed. Evan fired. The thing jerked but didn't fall. Instead, it turned toward the sound and smiled. It lunged. Darla swung the bat with everything she had, connecting with its arm. The limb bent backward at an angle that made her stomach turn, but the thing barely flinched. Henry fired point blank into its chest. This time it staggered, straight into the tines of an old hay baler they'd rigged behind it. The steel speared through, pinning it against the wall. The howl came again, loud enough to rattle the walls. "Help," it said, over and over, louder, faster, until it wasn't one voice anymore. It was many, overlapping, like a crowd screaming through the same mouth. Then it stopped. The barn went silent except for the scratch of the record's needle. When they looked again, the thing was gone. Only the bent tines and a smear of dark blood remained. They stood in the barn until the record ended, too afraid to move, too afraid to believe it was over. On the drive back into town, no one spoke. Darla unlocked the diner, set her bat behind the counter, and told herself she'd sleep in tomorrow. She had just started to drift off when she heard it, faint but clear through her bedroom window. A howl, and this time, it wasn't coming from the cornfield. It was coming from somewhere much closer. If you enjoyed today's tale of things that go help in the night, hit that like button. And subscribe for more stories that might just keep you out of cornfields forever. Trust me, it's safer this way.